Well, the mainstream media will do anything but admit the actual problems with what Hollywood, and that's Western animation studios, not anime, does. They are blaming anime for the War of Rohirrim failing at the box office. We'll get into the failure here, which we posted on our Fandom Pulse, and we'll tell you what the fake news over at CBR is talking about in just a moment. Please smash that like and subscribe button and join us here, guys, as we talk about all things in culture, especially pop culture, fantasy, science fiction, because I am a fantasy writer, and I would love for you to check out my series, if you've not already. This is The Adventures of Baron von Monocle. It's about an airship crew that goes out and fights monsters. It's a lot of fun. Great world building. You'll really enjoy this if you like fantasy fiction. It's available on ebook, print, and audio. Great way to support the channel. And it is all ages friendly, so if you want to get it for somebody for Christmas or the whatnot, that'd be amazing. I think it's a great Christmas gift. There's a 6-book series, too, for the avid reader out there. And it does build up super nicely. So grab all 6 books today, and thank you guys so much. Like I said, it's in the description below, and I appreciate you guys for being there. So Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim is officially a box office failure. Now, it has not come out in the United States yet. It is coming out this week, and I probably am going to go see it to review it for you guys because I think this is something that should be reviewed. So thank you for being here. Oh, my gosh. But Warner Brothers' upcoming Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim animated film bombed at various international box offices, bringing in only a total of $2 million. Now, films like this usually get carried by the international box office. The United States box office doesn't typically mean as much when it comes to something like this. And so this is a horrible sign for this skin suit of Lord of the Rings. And it is a skin suit. It has very, very little other than having the branding on it. And then it's just a bunch of complete made-up stuff that just bastardizes the lore. And it's been rejected. Kind of knows that, and nobody's really interested in that kind of thing here. According to Variety's Rebecca Rubin, the film debuted in 3,400 theaters, 31 different countries, but only was able to garner $2 million. The highest performing locations were Spain with 347,000, Mexico with 239,000, and Thailand with 146,000. Not very good at all. It's the latest piece of bad news for the film. Sean Robbins at Box Office Theory downgraded the film's domestic box office expectations in his latest forecast for December 5th. He had originally predicted it would only gross $15 million to $24 million possibly, and he specifically predicted 17.5. As for its total domestic box office haul, Robbins believed it would bring in an even $44 million. To potentially $84 million, saying it was probably going to hit around $49.5. He explained at the time the anime approach for this prequel is likely to hinder what usually a broader audience's appeal to the Lord of the Rings franchise. So immediately they blame anime. You could see this here as this is going to be the narrative for what's going on. It wasn't the fact that it was a bastardization of Tolkien's lore. It wasn't the fact that they changed everything and went full girl boss with this sort of thing. It was the fact that that it was anime, right? And this is really the problem with the media. They just don't understand what the real problems are. They willfully ignore it, honestly. However, he adds, still the medium's proven strong even with lesser-known titles in the domestic market, so Rings could attract some attention here as a counterplayer, not dissimilar to how Godzilla Minus One aided the market late last year. Well, that's only if word of mouth is good on it. If word of mouth was good on this, I have no qualms saying that this would probably be a success. But it's not. Word of mouth has been that this is terrible, that it is a bastardization of Tolkien's lore, that it has very little to do with Tolkien. It's just generic fantasy skin suit that's thrown onto this and then have this branding slapped onto it. And, of course, it even contradicts a lot of the lore that is established in the back of the appendices of Lord of the Rings. So he said Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim is slower out the gate in its early pre-sale modeling than projected. The pre-existing Tolkien fan base would normally be expected to generate a noticeable upfront demand, but the anime nature of the film could also skew typical demographics for a previously live-action-based franchise. Very interesting on this front here, and as we say on Fandom Pulse, it's likely that Tolkien's fan base is not interested in the film's feminist messaging, which is made apparent by the marketing made by the unnamed daughter of Helm Hammerhand, the protagonist of the film, rather than Helm Hammerhand. And so we're going to get into this and the whole deal, the whole problem with what they're doing with this, with Rings of Power. Now, here's CBR's take on it. War of the Rohirrim's box office prospects prove anime isn't invulnerable. You see, their entire narrative is, oh, it's just anime. The whole purpose is anime. The whole problem's anime. I don't think the style of animation has anything to do with this. Again, just Tolkien fans, when you are knowingly not respecting J.R.R. Tolkien's work and you are going against what he wrote, Tolkien fans tune out. Period. And then when Tolkien fans tune out, there is no word of mouth. There's no buzz that's being generated for it for normal people to then go, the normies, to then follow up suit when they hear it's a good film. And so that's it. This is exactly what happened with Rings of Power. I mean, Rings of Power's ratings have been a disaster. Season 2, much lower than Season 1. Despite them trying to ramp up this whole Sauron narrative, and it's because it just clearly is not Lord of the Rings. The characterizations are very, very off. The situations they're putting them into are just completely ringing false with audiences, and it's because they just want to push that feminist message on everybody, just like everything else. And so you can't do this with something like Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings has too much of a mythos that everybody knows, and when it's just completely ignored, people tune out. And that's the whole purpose. CBR are lying, and they're propagating this to justify the failure, when this is the real reason. Philippa Boyens, who's a producer, attempted to justify making an unnamed daughter of Hammerhand the main protagonist in an interview with Entertainment Weekly. The appendices where the story's drawn from, we get these quite interesting drawn male characters, and then we get this young female character who's never named and was the really interesting to me. Because it's a self-insert. And this is exactly the problem, is these feminists in Hollywood want to self-insert these characters all the time. They're not good writers. They can't make their own characters. They can't do their own thing. And so they try to appropriate other IPs like Lord of the Rings to see themselves in it. And the thing is, like, it wasn't interesting because it was just some unnamed character that was referenced in like 2 lines. And there's nothing interesting about that. That's the whole problem we have right here. We know Helm has a daughter. We know that she was central to the conflict that happened. But myself, and especially the screenwriter Phoebe Gitkins, another self-insert, were drawn to her. We could feel the weight of being that unnamed daughter. Oh gosh, which immediately piqued our interest. Who was she? How did she live? Well, it didn't pique anybody else's interest, very obviously here, but Hollywood greenlit it anyway, and this is the whole problem. So there's a report. Hera communes with the Great Eagle. She calls on the power of seemingly long-lost tribe of female warriors to drive out the Dunlendings from Rohan, which is not good, and it's not part of the lore. This did not happen in the appendices whatsoever, and they just completely changed it just to try to make this narrative again and to make themselves feel seen in here. And this is why, like, good writers don't write themselves as characters, like, as the main deal for the most part. I mean, this sort of thing is hack writing at its worst, and this is exactly why it's going to fail and why it is failing at the box office, and yet they don't want to admit it. They want to blame anime. Now, I actually think the anime looks appealing. I mean, if they actually did a good adaptation of Lord of the Rings and actually did some honor to the background lore of this in this anime style, I'd be all in on it. I'd be very, very excited about it. I am going to go see it anyway for you guys. Oh, this is going to be rough, and I know it is. And that's the problem. It is going to be rough. It is going to be bad writing. It's going to be a bad movie, and everybody knows it up front. I mean, it's pretty obvious. These people that just lie all the time, and I'm so sick of it. Leave a comment down below with what you think about this. Please hit the like and subscribe button. If you want some good fantasy, some actually well-written fantasy that is internally consistent to its own lore, check out my series, guys. Really appreciate you being there. It's in the description below. We'll be back soon.